Welcome everyone this morning. It is Monday, February the 8th, and we are doing a special Montana Teacher Librarian Digital Blast with a special guest today. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and get us started. Remind you that these digital blasts are short presentations with the option to be able to ask questions and interact with the ideas and the presenters. We want to share our ideas, best practices, and experience so that each of us has a chance to incorporate new ideas and new information into our practice. Just to remind you, there are links available if you click or hover over the left side of your screen and look at the showcase, or you can ask questions, whether it's during the live broadcast or if you're watching a recording, you can join the audience and post questions to us. So with that very quick introduction, Colette Bartow here at OPI would like to welcome Paige Jaeger to this short broadcast. Paige, thank you so much for being with us this morning. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, hi there. I'm glad to be here with you. And it's lunchtime here in the East Coast, and I don't know if anyone's really tuned in live, or predominantly Colette and I were venturing to say that most people will watch the archive version. So I'm here. I'm a former school librarian with about 15 years experience, let's say, in the classroom. And I was 8 years as a supervisor, administrator for 84 libraries here in the upstate New York region. Currently, I consult, and I am the instructional focus editor for School Library Connection, and I hope you are all familiar with that magazine. And we would love to get your articles, if you want to submit articles on great ideas that you have. Today we're going to talk about really increasing higher level thought through questioning, and really your connection to classroom. How do you incubate that a little bit better? These are the 3 books that I've co-written with Mary Ratzer, my good friend and colleague. 2 on the right are lesson plan examples, giving you, one is an elementary version, and the secondary version is another, is the darker version. And the RX for the Common Core talks about inquiry-based learning and how to really grab and handle grab a good understanding of asking questions as an incubator of higher level thought and research. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today.
And thank you so much, because I think one of the areas where teacher librarians in particular can really connect with classroom teachers is through the types of resources that you've shared. I mean, even with the books that you've shared, Paige, those lesson plans. How do we infuse that inquiry, that questioning, as a way to engage students and to unfold content area knowledge? So this is really timely and I think really important for us. Yeah. So shall I move on?
Yeah, if you would. I appreciate having this opportunity to discuss with people on the West Coast in Montana, and anyone else who really watches the archive, because I have this mission this year to get the message of this next 15 or 20-minute presentation as widely viewed as possible, because I believe the teachers all over trying to figure out where can I fit in inquiry? I have so many standards and I have to cover everything, and I'm worried about testing. So how am I supposed to, work with a librarian? And librarians are saying, how come people aren't collaborating with me? And, a light bulb went off a couple of years ago when I first started giving PD, and really saw the error or teachers stopping at one point in the process. So let's talk a little bit about the standards. In front of you is just an infographic here of all the places in the Common Core standards, which are, most of the states, but if your state is not Common Core, it's got something similar. So in the process of teaching in classrooms now, the 21st century learner, these are the opportunities with new standards where people should be coming to your library or using your cybrary connections. And we've all heard these buzzwords: close reading. It's not about just the reading, but it's also reading and the task. What are you going to ask them to do with the reading? And we're going to be talking about that more. Evidence-based claims. Evidence-based claim is really another way you can say research. Increased reading requirements. People should come to you. discussion and debate. What are they discussing? They should come to the library for evidence, for information. And so additional viewpoints that need support or opinions needing support, these are all reasons that teachers should be connecting with you. And feel free to use this graphic in a faculty meeting too. So hopefully in the next 15 minutes, you'll get some ideas to strengthen your role in the instructional process. So if you'd move on, Colette, to the next slide, we're going to be talking a little bit about questioning. So what does it mean? You know, these are buzzwords for Common Core and other new standards. Text-dependent questions, TDQs, guiding questions, evidence-based claims. You've heard those, right? And you can build inquiry questions, or, you know, AKA also known as problem-based learning, essential questions, umbrella questions. These are all terms that everyone's heard.
Well, and I think, you know, they're kind of bandied about a little bit too. And I think the beauty, if I can kind of echo what you're saying, is that this is all about what we as teacher librarians have always taught in getting students to ask those questions, to support what their claims or and answer their questions with that great information that we can provide. We're the nexus between asking the questions and having the information to actually answer them.
That's right. Let's spend some time building scaffolding where these fit. Text-dependent questions really are what's happening in the classroom. They're reading primary sources, or they're reading an ELA novel, or they're reading an article. And the teacher asks text-dependent questions to ensure understanding or to guide them to a standard. But the text-dependent questions really are more so happening in the classroom. Mm-hmm. But if you go on, let's talk about what you can do. If you think of your read aloud as a text, as a close reading text, either you're reading it to the students, or maybe you have multiple copies and they have the privilege of following along with you. But your text dependent, your questions that you ask during read aloud can also mirror the same theories of text-dependent questions. You always start in this panoramic mode. You don't want to assume that even your low-level learners or your ELL learners have the ability to, or the prior knowledge to jump into a story. So let's say in your handout there's a picture of Ruby Bridges. You might want to say, what's this about? Guess what this is about? And they might say, a little girl going to school. Well, you know it's really about desegregation or segregation. So you want to start with a platform of understanding before you even, read aloud, saying, this is about something called segregation or desegregation, and what does it sound like? And you build a platform for understanding before you even get into a story and start asking questions. You may not want to interrupt your read aloud, but you may want to ask some questions at the end. So you get the panoramic understood first, and then we move on to myopic, to the detail. So teachers are doing this in their classroom and kids are used to that. They should be if they're not, because let's face it, an ELL learner, he doesn't have half the vocabulary that his peers do, and he may not have the prior understanding, especially let's say they came from Korea or China or Mexico, ELL learners, or maybe they've just been in a Spanish-speaking household within the United States. They may not have the basic, have a clue that years ago things were segregated. So then teachers start asking the more myopic view. So we had a panoramic picture, and now we have a myopic view of the harbor to get to deep understanding of the text. Now, not to labor this point, but we do the same thing in the library. And here's an example. Now, this is important. This is a second grade book, and Octopus is amazing. So to lay this out and see what this is about, we actually have a classroom set of Octopus is amazing, and we use it as a multiple book text. And so you could ask concrete questions. This is about an octopus. Well, most people have an understanding of what an octopus is, but that's the panoramic. And then you get a little bit closer in there. What's this about? Where do they live? What facts do you read? But those are still low-level, basic questions. So before I get way down to understanding, you want to always scaffold your text-dependent questions from concrete to higher level thoughts. The second level, halfway up Bloom's notice, is you could ask the kids, how does the octopus's physiology help it survive in the environment? Now, believe it or not, second graders can get that big word, physiology. And the Common Core would encourage us to.
Oh, absolutely. And I think part of the power of building questioning in this way is that we're modeling for students from kindergarten all the way through what it looks like to ask and answer these great questions.
And you, Colette, you probably heard too that many teachers in these, maybe from 4th grade through 12th grade are saying, my kids can't ask questions. They don't know how to ask questions because we have produced this generation of packet of fill in the blankers.
Right.
That we have to actually treat this almost in a remedial form. So by asking these questions, you are, as you said, you're modeling how to digest text.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's such a powerful way to connect with students, and also, the more we recognize about the importance of building relationships with students, fostering creativity by taking the time to model and elicit the questions and then working through the answers, we help to really honor that part, not just the academic achievement, but that questioning and that wondering, that big why, and helping foster that beyond the primary grades instead of killing it.
That's exactly right. And Coley, what's happening is when teachers give out packets or fill in the blank, graphic organizers, they're asking their students to complete these text-dependent questions. They're saying, the evidence has to come from the text. But in the beauty of the library, and if you think of your read aloud as a text, that you're reading together, you actually have metacognitively been able to model higher level thought. When a kid is working in there with their paper, their handout, in their seat, they don't have the beauty of seeing how somebody else thinks. But you as a librarian can really connect. Brain research says that kids who cannot think will learn to think by seeing thinking modeled.
Yes.
And so we as librarians have the privilege of modeling that thought. So that's why if you can think of 1 or 2 great questions for your read aloud, and I'm sure librarians are doing this now, but maybe they're not acknowledging the key role that they can play in developing that ability to think, or the ability for the kid to succeed when they go back in the classroom and they're asked to do the same thing. Well, they might say, oh, this is like the library. We did this in library class.
Well, it is, and I think this is one of the, as we were talking about doing this, the whole idea of using the read aloud, not just reading books, which might be in someone else's perception of library time. Oh, the librarian, she's just reading books to the kids. No, the teacher librarian is modeling metacognitive processes. They're modeling inquiry. They are having an absolute influence on the academic success of those students, as well as fostering those relationships. So I just think this is so critical, and it's so important that our elementary teacher librarians in particular are really cognizant of their role.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, in the interest of time, let's take this a step further. No, let's go back. Go
ahead. Sorry.
You'll see that the third question there, teachers often just stop at step 2 or that line 2. They just ask the text-dependent questions and they stop there. Or even at the secondary level, they read their primary source, they get them to understand, what the annexation of Texas was all about. And they stop there instead of saying, let's move it a step further and leave the text. Inquiry happens when you move from inside the text to outside the text. And I could say, all right, now let's choose to be an ocean animal. Pick one. How is pollution impacting your environment? And suddenly we can guide them through, an inquiry process that might look different for 20 different students because they've chosen 20 different animals. But we've left the text. Now you can move on to the next slide for a minute. I call this, and this is the message that I wanted to get out there. Leaving the text. You're going from inside the text and requiring the kids to answer text-dependent questions with evidence from the text. Inquiry happens when we leave the text for some reason. We say, hey, what else happened in that text that used to, what else about octopuses would you like to know? Or what else about living in the ocean would you like to know? And suddenly I'm opening the big, bold world to these students by leaving the text. Caveat, classroom teachers, you're staying in the text too long and moving from one text to the next, to the book, and you're not letting the kid say, hey, I have some more questions that weren't answered in that text.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when inquiry happens.
It's very exciting, and I think you've described it really well. We can't limit ourselves to even a traditional idea of what text is. So definitely, we're talking about picture books, we're talking about read aloud, but we're also then opening up the opportunity to really incorporate primary sources, the other things that lead students to ask more questions and to be persistent in finding the answers.
Yeah. Let's demo how this works a little bit. All right. In
Okay.
front of you, right here, this is good. In front of you, we do this often in a full day PD, but in the interest of time, we're going to cheat this close read. We're going to make believe you had a close read about poaching. Now, since you're all adults with higher level degrees, this is actually difficult text, but I've found because it's so compelling, even younger kids can read it. And now, if I were a classroom teacher, I would say, Colette or anyone else that's on the line, why is poaching a problem? So you would answer with evidence from the text. So you might say, look at that in paragraph 2. It says populations have been exterminated in some places. So what else? What do you see there? Colette, why is poaching a problem? What evidence is there?
Well, it's illegal. It exceeds the supply.
Isn't she smart?
Let's see. Oh my.
Yeah.
The destruction is overwhelming.
Oh, you're doing so great. You're setting me up for the next question. So, the teacher would ask the kids to come up with that evidence. Now, here's another. Now, knowing that she has other standards to meet from reading, she might say, Colette,
yes.
What negative words does this author use to paint a negative voice here, to create his voice? What negative words do you see there?
Well, the word killing seems pretty negative to me, because if it were, and eradicated, that's a pretty strong word. Exterminated.
You got it. What else?
Horrific. Oh my goodness. Attacked.
Yeah. Notorious.
Notorious. Oh, let's see. I'm reading quickly here.
That's right.
There's suffering, wounding, bereavement.
You got it.
Oh my goodness.
He does a wonderful job of modeling a negative voice. So these are the type of questions, text-dependent questions that a teacher would ask their students, and then they get all over this. And they say, all right, let's go on to the next subject. But in reality, inquiry happens. All the students' questions are not answered in the text. So they'd say, all right, students, anyone online, what else do you want to know about poaching? And then we could brainstorm a list of many questions, such as, you got a question? Like why? What else?
Well, for me, what's the impact on the environment when these animals are killed? What's the impact on that landscape and the people? Yeah,
and if we were live with, people in the room, the brainstorming would go. They'd say things like, "Who's buying it?"
Right.
Aren't there any international laws? What else?
And we have 4 viewers, so I'll just remind you that if you hover over the left side of your screen, there's a Q&A icon. You can click there and ask your questions there, or join our activity in terms of posing those questions.
But you get the idea that the text-dependent questions totally are answered in the text. But this is an example of a compelling read that just begins to touch the surface. And this is what we call reading, using close reading as a springboard to research.
And I think this is a good example too, because thinking middle level, somewhere in the middle, up through even secondary schools, just using a shorter excerpt, a chunk. Oh, and we have a question. Christy asks, her question is,
There,
who is
yeah,
demanding the ivory?
you
Um,
got it.
that's a great question, and
When we do this in live with PD, metacognitive, it's really interesting to watch. Some people have questions, and then questions breed more questions. And before you know it, we have a list of 25, 30 questions easily.
mhm.
What is it used for? Aren't there any international laws? Isn't there a synthetic? Why did the people do it? It goes on and on. Unbelievable.
Well, and you have based on the questions you have, as you said, the connections to other standards. So, and
Mhm.
so we can look at the science behind some of these things. We can look at the,
Mhm.
kind of the history or the social aspects of this issue. And in doing so, we're going
Mhm.
to connect with the interests of a variety of kids. And in that way, I think it helps us personalize. I think
That's exactly right.
one
Yeah.
of the tricks, though, is that, we have to give ourselves time, understand the depth and the power of an activity like this, and give us time as students, and create that environment where students can actually find the
Yeah.
answer to those questions. So I think that's a really important planning consideration. And it specifically, I think, speaks to your point of getting outside the text. Don't let
Right.
the text be the end of what it is that students do with this information.
And
Build
think
in
about,
that time for questioning and answering.
yeah, and think about what you just said.
Hmm.
Build in the time for questioning and answering. This is the key technique to breeding or incubating what the Common Core says students should be doing. Uh, is building short-term as well as long-term research reports, incubating the short-term research assignments. Now, everybody knows what those long ones look like. They're
Right.
defined and they last 2 weeks, a month, or longer. But it's the short-term that teachers don't know how to incubate. And look at what we just did. We
Hmm.
just read one close depend, in one close reading piece, a short piece. This is the forward to Blood, Ivory, Blood, Horns, and Ivory.
Uh-huh.
On the handout. But this is just a forward, and I didn't even read the book. But basically, this is a way of incubating the short-term research assignment, so every kid could pick a different question, come down to the library, research the answer to that one or two or three questions that they choose, and then you could have a discussion and debate, or build an evidence-based claim on whether poaching is really a problem. Now, this actually really correlates to the new C3 standards in third grade. You could get
Right.
an easier piece on poaching, and then lead into a global conversation, how we're really mutually interdependent societies. So
Hmm. Hmm.
so that's sort of a cheating of a close read, but
But just think
that
how excited we were by it, and how much, the opportunity to really get into what students' interests is through this too.
yeah.
And Christy says collaboration between classroom teachers and teacher librarians can help find the time for students to dive deep. That's
Hmm.
right on, Christy. I appreciate that comment,
That's
because it
true.
does take that collaboration or that cooperative effort between the teacher librarian and classroom teacher to make sure that something like this isn't an isolated event
That's
within
correct. Yeah.
library time or within the classroom, that we show students the connection between what the instructional strategies are and the
Yeah.
information that helps fulfill that.
Well, if you think about that, if you think about what you just said, find the time. This is a life skill. We
Hmm.
ask questions every day. Every situation we encounter should breed a question, or for an inquisitive mind to go and find the answer to, and that's life. And here's another way teachers can embrace this, in case you want to take
Hmm.
this back to your faculty meeting. Often social studies teachers or science teachers will present two sides of an issue. They'll give them
Right.
two close reading, and then they're supposed to use the two pieces or three, uh, and create an evidence-based claim based on the 2 or 3 pieces. Well, I say, instead of doing that, just give them one side.
Right.
And then come down to the library to research the other 2 sides to the opinion, or the other 2 sides of the coin.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you're not spoon feeding this, or straight jacketing them within the test, or spoon feeding them the 2 or 3 views. Instead, right, you're creating thinkers, and you're creating you're breeding a lifelong skill amidst those students. So it's, in addition to being a standard, it's a life skill.
Absolutely, absolutely. There is a richness here that I hope that more teachers and teacher librarians will take advantage of by intention.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you want to move forward. We're heading towards the end of our hour, and I think that's about the end of what we wanted to say. But basically, I wanted to encourage you that even at a very early age, you can use the same premise or the same techniques, being inside or outside the text with your questions, or leaving the text, leaving that text-dependent questions and going to your big world, even at a younger age. Kindergarten, first grade. We know Eric Carle is famous. But why do we need each other, huh? That feeds right into your social studies standards. So I call this a way to covertly collaborate, too, with what's going on in the classroom.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think there's maybe one more text, and basically it says, it's your turn.
Mm-hmm.
I would really challenge librarians and teachers to not stop within the text, but to ask their students, these type of questions at the end of a close reading exercise, so that they can breed research. You can incubate, inquiry-based learning and research and information literacy skills. Each time a student comes to you, they have the ability then one more time to learn and solidify that process of asking questions and answering them with text.
Well, the last question that's on this slide, do we need to become activists? That was a question that really struck me, because I've been reading a lot and hearing a lot and talking with other teacher librarians about the opportunities to engage in social justice, or to become engaged in solving problems that are within our communities. And again, students need to see and practice what it means to do research, what it means to actively engage in inquiry, so that they can be part of the solutions. It's one of the challenges, I think, for school library programs. How do you make that learning outside of the school, in the same that we were talking about going outside the text? How do we show students that there's a path to have an impact, or to have a voice in what happens in their community? So that's a really huge, like you said, kind of a very broad landscape sort of idea to think about. But if we want students to have authentic, relevant learning experiences, it really does make it real to go beyond that.
That actually feeds into the goal of the new social studies standards too. You're compelled to civic action.
Yes.
And so it all, it's really, the standards are being really woven together.
I think so too. So I don't see another question coming in, but I'm thinking that as we have viewers who watch this recording, you always have the opportunity, as I said, to ask questions, even if you're watching the recording, by using that Q&A button, and it will prompt a question to come to me, and I'll share that with Paige. And just, I wanted to say thank you very, very much, Paige, for spending this time. Be thinking as we go out, for those of you who are at middle levels or at elementary level, secondary, how could you, even whether it's a novel or read aloud or other book, other reading material, turn that into a short research project that really builds student inquiry? There are so many ways, and so be in touch with us and give us your thoughts about that.
My pleasure.
As always, you can watch the recording of this session on the Montana Teacher Librarian Google site, or you could even earn renewal units. I'll be putting this together with a group of recordings so that you can engage with the ideas and earn some renewal units through our Teacher Learning Hub. And with that, I'd also, Paige came to me through this form. You could be a speaker or propose a topic, and I really welcome. It's more fun when we have a chance to have a dialogue and learn together than to just listen to me sometimes. But with that, Paige, thank you so much for
It's my
spending
pleasure.
time with me this morning, and we look forward to visiting more in the future.
Yes. It's great to virtually meet everybody, and
And
wish you well.
we'll be in touch. So with that, I will close the broadcast.